Palma from BRAINFOODTV.com. Got a great conversation for you today. I got two guys. It's taken a little while to get together, different sides of the country. Very, very busy guys. Really excited to have them both on. We've got Dr. Dan Diamond, an expert in performance under pressure, and Steve Spencer, who is also an expert in performance under pressure, but from a very different side of the world. So, guys, welcome, first of all. Let me give you sort of our ground rules about Brain Food. First is we don't take ourselves too seriously. We're here to just have a fun conversation and exchange ideas. Two, anything that we say are our own opinions. They're really not the opinions of any organizations that we work for. And lastly, this is not a commercial thing. This is just an open and honest conversation. So that said, gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. I'm glad to be here. Excited to have this conversation. Actually, we have been trying to put this together forever and a day.
It's been a while. Steve, how are you, pal?
I'm doing very well. Excited to have it. Looking forward to it and seeing how the conversation goes.
Excellent, excellent. So let me kind of give the listeners here and the watchers sort of a little bit of a feel for you guys. So Dan, you're a physician who spends your time not only in your practice in the Seattle area, but you drop yourself in disaster areas like the Philippines after typhoon, New Orleans after Katrina. I think you went to Haiti after the earthquake. So you spent a lot of time basically helping people in these crazy areas. How did you get involved in that?
Oh, I've been doing it, oh man, my entire career. I started out when I was in medical school and spent 3 months working in a refugee camp in Thailand with Hmong refugees. And once that gets in your blood, then it's, there's no going back.
So one of the things that's really cool about that is and this is kind of your whole thing, is you're starting to figure out what makes people tick. Why some people perform when things get bad and other people don't. Now, let me kind of introduce our other guest, Steve Spencer. Steve, you're responsible for the care and feeding of 600 people in the field right now? Is that a fair statement?
Roughly 600 salespeople.
Gotcha. And so you're charged with trying to figure out who's going to perform under pressure. Can you spot that early? Can we train to it? How do we manage that? So what do you think about this whole idea?
Well, I think it's very interesting, and I'm glad that Dr. Diamond is on the other side of the line because at the end of the day, he's one of the customers. The ultimate customer is the patient. But how do you get the appropriate product to the appropriate patient? You have to go through the physician. And there are ways, effective ways to go through that. And I think a lot of the industry has made very valiant attempts to do that. Some have failed pretty miserably. But we're going to talk through that today.
Gotcha. So I'm going to ask you both the same question. First, I'm going to ask you, Steve, and then I'm going to cut back to Dr. Diamond. So what's a good rep?
What's a good rep?
Yeah.
From my perspective, a good rep obviously would have to have characteristics of professionalism and respect and integrity. And regardless of whether you're a sales rep or you're in some other kind of profession, I think those are core characteristics. I think someone that partners with their physician customer, someone that understands their needs, someone that provides resources and is seen as a partner. Now, that's easily said, very challenging to do.
Got it.
Because every physician is different.
Okay. Dr. Diamond, what do you think?
Man, I have seen every possible type of rep on the planet. I've been in practice for 28 years now. So, the ones that have made the biggest impact in my care of patients and in my practice as a whole have been the ones that took the time to understand my practice.
Okay.
Time to understand who I am. They even down to how do I like to get information? What's my learning style? What are my patients like? What are the biggest issues that I have? And they spend much more time getting to know me and my needs before they ever open their mouth with their 3 points in a close.
3 points in a close. There you go. Steve, talk to me about that juxtaposition. We spend so much time and energy getting people ready for the 3 points in a close, right? That whole didactic, let me get my message out regardless. And it's funny, as Dr. Diamond just said, one of the things that we hear and we see in the data when we ask physicians these questions is, what are you looking for? And what they say is, listen to me, help my patients, help educate, help us deal with our practice. Are we doing a good enough job, Steve, addressing what the doctors are asking for, or are we just sort of blinded by the commercialism of what we have to do?
I think there's an impasse. So there's a crossroads that's happening. And I think we are training the reps the right way to learn more about the physician's practice. And I agree with you, Dr. Diamond, 100%. A rep should get to know the practice, should get to know the physician. What are the ins and outs? What is the culture of the practice? Because that's important. Because they're going to leave one office and go to the next office, and all the rules are different. So the culture, the practice, the physician, the healthcare plans, the disease states that they're treating, they're going to be totally different. So the rep has to be flexible. Now, the crossroads happen where we teach the rep how to do these things. Now, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to them to execute that. Now, what happens is the rep is thinking about, oh, I have to get this core message out because the marketing team said I have to say that, and I have to say it this way. If I don't say it this way, then my manager is going to come down on me. Oh, I have to make this many calls per day. And the imbalance happens where the metrics lean more heavily than the actual partnering with the practice. So the attempt is there, but at the end of the day, what happens is the rep wants to make sure they essentially CYA and do the right things by the company's perspective and not really putting the physician first or their practice first.
Wow. So they're kind of completely conflicted, and so we're training them for this job, and we're saying, listen, you have to be a chameleon. You have to be everything that practice wants you to be, and everything we want you to be as a marketing organization or a sales organization. And from a regulatory standpoint, you have to make sure that you fit within that box and you stay within the lines. But at the same time, Dr. Diamond and other physicians are saying, listen, guys, help me out here. That's really, really interesting. Now, let me kind of pivot a little bit for a second. And so, is it possible to teach someone that sort of flexibility? And I'm going to ask this question this way, because one of the things that Dr. Diamond has seen in his, putting himself into these situations is that people kind of fall into categories. Dr. Diamond, can you tell us a little bit more about how people react when you put them in sort of stressful situations?
Yeah, and this became very evident after Katrina, where everybody was living on the street. So people couldn't hide behind their stuff or their status. We were all on equal playing ground. I was sleeping on the street. When you get tired, you just kind of lay down in the parking lot where we were working and lay down on the pad, and everybody was doing that. So what we saw, I remember this woman that was being interviewed by CNN, and she was holding her little daughter's hand, and she's screaming at the CNN reporter, "When is George Bush going to bring me my food?" And I remember saying, he's not. George Bush is not going to bring you your food. And when you look at that, that's classic. It goes back to what Julian Rotter said back in the 1950s about victims, is that they believe that power is external to them and stuff happens to them. So if they had a bumper sticker, it would say stuff happens, and then in fine print, to me, and then little fine print underneath, all the time.
Okay.
And then there's a second dimension to it. It's not all power. Some of it has to do with purpose. And the thing that struck me most about her is that she was not saying, when is George Bush going to bring my daughter some food? So these victims become powerless takers. And sometimes when reps come into my office, they approach it as if they're kind of powerless and it's all about them. So the first time they come in, and I've never seen them before, they're a brand new green rep, I'll let them close me and do the 3 points in the close. And then I will say, did you practice that in your car before you came in? And they look down at their feet and go, yeah, I did. I said, okay, here's the ground rules of my practice. You can never close me again unless your manager is with you.
Wow, okay.
That's the deal. I don't want your 3 points in the close ever again, or we'll throw you out. You need to come in and understand what my practice is about. I want the reps to realize that they have the power to make a difference with my practice. They have the power to influence how I take care of patients, but it can't be about them. It has to be about my patients, number one, and in order to get there, they have to make it about the provider as well. They have to make it about me. Like, what do you need? Help me to understand your practice. So come in with questions. Don't come in with 3 points in the close.
That's a really, really cool idea. So you mentioned two words. You said power and purpose. Steve, talk to me a little bit about power and purpose. Obviously, we're trying to enable these reps. We're giving them the power. We're giving them tools. We're giving them messaging. We're giving them the science. And then we're giving them a purpose. But it doesn't seem to always connect. As Dr. Diamond said, you've got some people who are just going to kind of show up and throw up, for lack of a better phrase, right? They're going to get into 3 points of close no matter what, because they're thinking selfishly about the numbers, and we understand why that is. But can we look at people sort of across that spectrum, and can we identify people who are more or less likely to succeed, and why?
Well, I think there's been a lot of science done to support whether we can or whether we can't. I can talk to you about some of the techniques that I would recommend and some of the areas that we focused on. And, the sales rep in front of the physician, that's the end result. to me, it's too late at that point to really identify who can and who can't.
What?
At that point, we have to turn into teaching them and restructuring their thoughts and habits so they understand that this is a total office call. It's a full continuum, and that it's a long-term investment. It's not a run-and-gun type of mentality where you run into a physician's office, you get the doctor to agree, and you walk out, because the doctor can say, yes, I'll write all of your products for 100% of my patients and still not do it. So great, you got your points out, the doctor agreed, but the doctor really didn't do or follow up with what he said. So in order to identify those people, I think it really starts at the interviewing stage. So right before you hire this person, they're going through a series of interviews, behavioral interviews, intellectual interviews, and I think we need to focus much more heavily on that piece of the hiring part, because if we don't identify that up front, we will be challenged with those reps that Dr. Diamond so eloquently described. Here's my 3 points, here's my close. Do I have you? We're going to get those reps.
Let me stop you there for a second, because that's a fascinating concept. So we're interviewing these people, and obviously we spend a lot of money attracting the right people, hiring the right people, training the right people, sending them out into the world, giving them materials. It's a very expensive proposition, isn't it? So, and Dr. Diamond is, in his experience, so again, not apples to apples, dropping into a typhoon in the Philippines is not exactly the same as dropping into his office in Seattle, is it? But stress is a relative thing. So that said, one of the things that Dr. Diamond, I think you said, is that you've sort of found that people fall into these categories, the takers, the givers, the people who have a purpose, the people who don't, and you had that sort of 2x2. Is that something that we can predict? Are there ways that we can apply that to that process so we don't waste money, for lack of a better phrase? Basically getting people who are just so blinded by one aspect or the other that they miss the whole value proposition. They miss sort of the delicate dance between, hey, I want to be a great resource for my customers, but I also want to go ahead and be commercially successful. How do we do that? Dr. Diamond, why don't you take a swing?
Well, I would throw back another question to you, and because I've spent a good amount of time with pharma, I've done probably 1,000 ride-alongs with reps. Wow. And there is a really bizarre thing that happens when you get a rep and they kind of move up through the ranks and they get promoted to become a district manager. Then when they start riding with their reps that are working under them, it's interesting that they go back to the 3 points in a close model. They know it doesn't work because they know that their boss is going to be after them to do that. So there's this kind of culture that happens that looks like it's saying on one hand, yeah, you need to be customer-centric and patient-centric, but then that's not really how we put our matrix together to evaluate people when we're doing your evaluations. So that's why you end up with this situation of I'll let you do your 3 points in a close when your manager comes in. If you can give me a heads up, I might be able to give you a little bit more time, kind of a thing, because I know how the system works. But I don't think the system should work that way. I think we should be evaluating and grading reps on what kind of job they do, custom tailoring the message to providers, and that's a harder matrix to put together.
Sure, I'm sure. So are we asking, Steve, are we asking these people to be bipolar? Are we asking them that you have to react one way and we're going to train you this way, but we really expect you to do this, wink, wink, nudge, nudge? How do we do that?
Well, it's having very clear objectives. I mean, what the sales reps are trained to do, whether you're a hospital rep or specialty rep or primary care, we have to capture prescriptions. I mean, our goal is to help as many patients as possible. Now, that road to get there will look differently depending on which product you have, which company you work for, and so forth. But the ultimate goal is to help the patient. Not every sales rep does it the best way. I think training them with the behaviors we want them to exhibit is the key. Now, managing to those behaviors versus, okay, we're a for-profit organization, we still need to sell product. So how do we get there? And again, much to what I said earlier, the reps like to jump to the close. Hey, doctor, will you write our product? And it's that long-term value. It's an investment. It's a stock if you approach it that way. If you invest the time up front. So, Dr. Diamond, how are you? My name is Steve Spencer. I'm from XYZ Company. I'm new, meeting you for the first time. I want to better understand your practice. I have my products. We can talk about them, but I'd much rather learn about you and how you operate, how you run your business. What are some of your challenges? How do you want me to interact with you and your staff? So, approaching it from that standpoint, no product, is inserted in there at all. And I would say the first couple calls maybe should be around that to understand the practice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great foundation. When I think back to Katrina, and we were kind of marching out this powerful, powerless, giver and taker, in that 2x2 grid, you can also end up with a powerful taker, and those are the manipulators. And I've had some horror stories of reps that have you know, I mean, the guys that say, "Will you give me your next 10 scripts?" I don't know what the word to you. I'm not going to do that. What are you, crazy? Or the one that said, "I could be your girlfriend." I don't think so. I've been married for 30 years. I'm not interested in that.
Wow.
Or the guy that's sitting there looking at the chart that I'm working on saying, well, how come you're not using my drug? And clearly a HIPAA violation, and then getting into an argument with me about whether or not it was a HIPAA violation. He didn't last long. We threw him out, and he lost his job. But those manipulators that come in saying, it's all about me, and I will, because I have the power, manipulate you into writing my script. That's completely different than somebody that comes in that says, how's your day? And I've had patients where I just had to tell somebody that they had terminal cancer. I walk out of the exam room, and it's somebody I've taken care of for 20 years, and I am bummed out. And the rep says, hey, Dr. Diamond, I'd like to talk to you about that or that. I said, no, dude.
Yeah, listen.
Not now. But, okay, but. And then they go into their 3 points in the close. It's like, really?
That's amazing.
You don't know. It's like, how am I just starting out with, how's your day going? And I would be honest and say, I'm having a really hard day today. I just had to tell somebody they're going to die.
So how do we get people to not be tone deaf? And so we're going to kind of wrap this up a little bit. But so what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Diamond, is that for the most part, you'll see some people who are really, really good. Again, we've got a spectrum. Some people who are really, really good, who will build a relationship with you, who will listen to you, who will help add value. And then you've got people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, who are basically just going to be, manipulators. To your point, they're going to show up and be completely tone deaf to you because they're interested in what they want or what their boss wants or what their boss's boss wants. Steve, unfortunately, you're the guy who's responsible for figuring out who these people are, which one of these they're going to be, and then there's also sort of the issue that we have with, if we tell them, listen, we want your customers to be your friends, we want you to have those relationships, we want you to build value, we want customer satisfaction to be the most important thing, yet we compensate them using a completely different model. And I know some pharma companies actually have looked at these models about compensating as opposed to TRX or NRX and looking at things like client satisfaction.
Right.
Is there a way that we can reconcile this? I mean, is there a way that we can sort of break through those pressures and create better performance?
I think we can. I think it's going to take some time to get to that point. It's going to take consistent reinforcement of the right behaviors and not putting the dollar above behaviors, because the dollar can guide behaviors. But if you let the behaviors do the right thing, that the dollars will come. And it's having the trust in the fact that I'm doing the right thing. So, Dr. Diamond, to address your scenario around a patient that unfortunately passed away, I was putting myself in the shoes of a sales rep at that time. And I don't care if I drove an hour to see you or had a hard time finding parking in the New York City area. And if I walked in, like, hey, Dr. Diamond, how are you? Like, you know what? I had a patient that just died. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Listen, if there's a better time, I'll come back later. Go do what you have to do today. That's an investment, because I truly believe that. Because I wouldn't want a rep trying to sell me something and something terrible just happened at work. It doesn't work that way. So I think, Michael, it's going to take time. It's going to take consistent reinforcement. And unfortunately, every pharma company is an N of one, and you can only control your reps. The next company will do what they're going to do. So I think it's going to take an industry-wide change or initiative to really show the difference. And given where we're at now in time in the pharmaceutical industry, we've all hit the patent cliff where the big blockbuster drugs are no longer out there, so companies have downsized, so we have a smaller amount of reps.
But that mindset's still there. That commercial mindset's still there. Keep in mind the people who are in higher level positions are the people that came up through that industry, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I tell you,
so
Steve,
we have to be more
if you come in to see me, Steve, and you say, man, I'm sorry, and I'll cut you some, what can I do to help you? I certainly don't want to talk product with you today. That's like putting money in the bank. When you come back next time, I'm going to give you more time than the 2 visits put together would have been otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think Steve's thinking right now, so as great as that is, Dr. Diamond, you know, just as you see variability in reps, reps see variability in doctors, because for every one Dr. Dan Diamond, there's going to be somebody else who either I don't want to see, or, you know, physicians are going to fall into those four categories too, right? They're going to be manipulators, there's going to be power, there's going to be purpose. So obviously it's a complex sort of environment. And just to kind of step back a little bit, and I'm going to wrap this up, you know, one of the things that we say, and one of the reasons we started Brain Food, was that pharma is an echo chamber. It's a lot of the same people saying the same things over and over and over. And it really takes conversations like this with thought leaders like yourselves to change the conversation, to challenge what we've always done, to ask questions. Well, why are we doing that? You know, if somebody's telling us, listen to me, help me, why are we not doing it? Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. It's been a fantastic conversation. As long as it took to get this together, it was absolutely worth it. I'd love to do this with you guys again. So, guys, from Brain Food TV, this is Michael LaPalma signing off. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.